Hello, and welcome to Capital Harmonia's 6th Annual Women's Choral Festival. I am Marianne East, co-founder and artistic director. Each March, in conjunction with Women's History Month, and specifically International Women's Day on March 8th, we gather to celebrate music for women by women. We were so lucky last year to be able to hold our festival in person right before quarantine orders began. We were joined then by Bella Voce Treble Choir from Freedom High School in South Riding, Virginia. We will share some of the performance from last year with you today. Although we can't be in person this year, we are so grateful that you are taking some time to join us once again in celebrating women in music. This program features 2 virtual choir performances, interviews with one of our longtime partner organizations, and 2 composers, as well as pieces from our 2020 festival. You will have the opportunity to learn a bit more about who Capital Harmonia is and what makes us unique, and of course the opportunity to support us in continuing our work. We would like to thank Arts Laureate for the production of our 2 virtual choir pieces and for compiling this concert. We are deeply grateful for the technology that allows us to continue making music. We begin our program with one of our pieces from last year's concert. We Are the Voices by Jim Popoulis emphasizes that each and every one of us has a message and story to tell. This is an opportunity to bring voices from different generations together, to magnify that message, and celebrate using our voices to speak for those who cannot. We are the voices that will be heard.
everybody. My name is Ellen Goldman. I'm a co-founder of Capital Harmonia and currently a singer with the group. We are so pleased to have the opportunity for a conversation with Laura Farnell, the composer of our next piece, Glorious Life. Laura's bio is Texas strong. She received a bachelor's in music education for choral music with piano emphasis from Baylor University. After graduating, Laura first taught elementary music in Mansfield, Texas, and then junior high school in Arlington, Texas. Her junior high school choir program earned numerous awards. In 2004, Laura received an Excellence in Education Award as the Arlington Independent School District's Outstanding Junior High Teacher of the Year. Laura is represented by several music publishing companies with more than 80 published choral compositions, plus a co-authored sight singing method. In addition to composing, Laura works as a clinician for honor choirs across the country. She is a member of the Texas Music Educators Association, the Texas Choral Directors Association, and the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. Laura's husband, Russell, serves as the Minister of Music, and Laura directs the children's choirs at the First Presbyterian Church of Arlington, Texas. Thank you, Laura, for being part of Capital Harmonia's annual choral festival. As you know, we feature the music of women composers. So please start out by telling us, how did you decide to compose in addition to teaching?
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, you may have heard, and that was true for the start of my composition career. At the time I was first teaching junior high, I found that there was very little repertoire for the developing tenor bass voice, and that I was spending more of my time rewriting or adapting pieces already in print just so my students could sing them. And with a limited budget, I found that it was more economical to start and of my time and the funds to simply create my own piece of music for them to sing or arrange pieces of music. So that's what I did my first year and of teaching junior high. And at the end of the year, I thought perhaps other directors or choirs could benefit from these compositions. So I submitted them for publication. In fact, to Alliance Music, the same publisher of this piece, and they accepted it, one of them for publication, and the rest they say is history.
Terrific. So what is the composition process like for you?
I would say it varies a lot from piece to piece. Many times the text is the inspiration for it. I have a collection of poetry that speaks to my soul, and I either have found it online or maybe I've heard another composition and I'm touched by it by reading it or hearing it, and I tuck it away in a little file. And then when I have the opportunity to write, I look at the poetry I've collected and try to find something that I think I can use at that juncture. At other times, I've had a melody float into my mind many times it's when I'm driving the car, unfortunately, because sometimes that's difficult then to capture it. But then melodically it develops first, and then later I think, what type of text do I have, do I want to create that matches the style of that melody, whether it's energetic or more introspective. And then it's not a formulaic process. It sort of evolves based on the project or the piece.
How long does it take you to compose a piece that, say, is 3 to 5 minutes in length?
That also varies. I would say I remember probably the fastest one, also when necessity is the mother of invention, when I had really just Tuesday and Thursdays when I had two little sons that was their time when they went to preschool. So I had Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 1. And one day I already had something in my mind, but I was able to get the whole thing done in that block, or almost the whole thing done. It was a shorter piece as well, less involved. And sometimes it really does take a long time, not necessarily to put it into the computer, which is a part of the process, but for it to evolve and marinate in my mind so that writer's block, you've heard of that probably everyone has experienced, that you have to kind of stop and step away. So days, weeks, months sometimes, because I don't want to force that process. I want it to be something that I feel is a result of um, the creativity and the message I want to convey from for the piece from my heart.
Okay, let's focus on Glorious Life. How would you position Glorious Life in your composition repertoire?
One thing that's notable about that composition is the fact that it's a treble piece written by soprano alto, so usually female singers, written by a woman composer with a primarily based on a text that's primarily taken from the work of a female poet. And I think that's notable for both the occasion of the commission, the choir that requested to be written, as well as for this performance.
So the Princeton Girl Choir commissioned this piece for their 30th anniversary season in 2009. When they asked you to compose the piece, did they have anything special in mind or give you any special direction?
When these types of projects are and opportunities come to me, of course, there are many conversations that happen. It's a back and forth process between the director, often of the organization, and the composer. And in this case, there was no dictation as to a specific text or style. They were very free in their constraints, but we had conversations back and forth. What do you think about this poet? Okay, I was thinking this. They definitely wanted a treble piece, kind of described the difficulty level that they were hoping for the work, and then we went from there.
So the text is based on the poem Life by Hildegard Hawthorne, with additional text from Robert Herrick's poem To the Virgins to Make Much of Time, and a paraphrased quote from Helen Keller, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. What led to this unique combination of texts?
The jumping off point was most definitely the life poem. It's the bulk of the text, the kind of the beginning and the end of it. So that came first in the composition process for me. Then, as I worked on the piece and felt it would, I think, from an aesthetic standpoint, have a lyrical, slower, which you'll hear in a minute, middle section, I was looking for a text that kind of fit that same theme. The Herrick poem was one that I had studied in literature. In fact, I've used it before, not in a specifically in a composition like this, but I've used it before because I love the theme and I love this poetry. It's very old and timeless for a reason. And so using that and then the Latin version of it kind of developed for that slow middle section. And then in our modern age, I think this is kind of interesting. I was looking for just a little something else to go with it for the transition. And I Googled quotes with the Carpe Diem theme or something along those lines. And that's when there were so many listed, but the Helen Keller quote, of course, with her notoriety and her life truly fitting into that theme. And as a woman, when I read it, I thought, wow, this is great. So was able to incorporate that. There were some others that I looked at that didn't make the cut, but that's sort of the process that brought those three literary snippets together.
Wonderful. So let's talk about the music now. You've described the music as depicting the theme of straining and strife while conveying the strength and courage that people have in face of challenges, as well as depicting the passage of time. What do you hope that audiences will take away from Glorious Life?
Well, I hope that they will take away really the message of the text, which is really at the essence of this piece, to make the most of the time that we're all given. And as reflecting on this piece a little bit recently, I was thinking how it was written pre-pandemic in my life and in the life of the world, and how now so many of us are daily, or at least regularly, presented with the prospect of the frailty of life, and to then in turn take the message of this text, which is that, life can change dramatically in a moment, so that none of us really should take any of our days, our gift of days or time, for granted, and to truly make the most of those, with the choices and the time that we have in our life.
Great, great message. Thank you, Laura, for sharing your thoughts on this piece, and thank you for the wonderful composition that everyone is about to hear.
Thank you so much.
Life. Give me the strength and height of glorious life, the dazzling light, the straining and the strife, love, passion, hope in their divinest scope, high winds on mighty seas, not sheltered bay, the storm that frees wild torrents great and gay with sudden power, not the soft springtime shower. And if the storm should kill, the torrent drown, so be it still. Still, let me snatch the crown life has to give, and cry, but once I live. Collige Virgo, rosas, rosas, gather ye rosebuds while ye may. Time is a flying, carpe diem. Let us seize the day, for life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all.
Capital Harmonia was founded in 2013. From the start, we knew we wanted to do something different. We wanted to connect to and serve the local women's community through the performance of music for women's voices and featuring women composers and poets. We began connecting with local organizations, and over the last 8 years, we have developed wonderful partnerships. You will hear from one of our partners, House of Ruth, in a moment. We have sung at shelters, luncheons, galas, and holiday celebrations. We've had the privilege of singing at the Willard Intercontinental Hotel in downtown DC each year, except this last, as part of their holiday lobby caroling series. And we were the first ever musical cheer stop for the Avon Walk for Breast Cancer. We have partnered with N Street Singers at Luther Place Memorial Church, at the Women Giving Back Santa's Workshop, and performed at a luncheon for the local League of Women Voters chapters. Some of us had the amazing experience of singing at Carnegie Hall as part of their Women's Choral Festival. Capital Harmonia is not just about performing for the larger community, but also about building community within the choir. As artistic director, it has been really tough not to hear the choir singing together each Wednesday night, but it has been a blessing to see them and to be able to converse and continue to grow together over the past year. We can't wait to be with you in person again soon. We will continue to lift up women through song and service. Next up, our board president, Janice Ware, had a delightful interview with Elizabeth Kiker, the Director of Development for House of Ruth.
Hi, I'm Janice Ware, and I'm here with Elizabeth Kiker. Elizabeth is the Director of the House of Ruth, Director of Development of the House of Ruth, and which provides shelter and resources for women in need. Capital Harmonia has performed for the House of Ruth for since we were created, and that's 7 years ago. And I have to say honestly that the House of Ruth performance is our favorite performance each year. And I'm thrilled to have Elizabeth with us so we can talk more about the House of Ruth and what they do for women. And so I'm going to go to Elizabeth now and say, Elizabeth, please tell us more about the House of Ruth and your role at the House of Ruth.
Thank you so much, Janice. It's an honor to be here talking with Capital Harmonia. We have a lot of partnerships at House of Ruth, and this is one that brings us particular pleasure and delight each year. So House of Ruth was founded in 1976. We were the first women's homeless shelter in Washington, D.C. So our focus has always been on women and helping them recover from homelessness. We've expanded our mission in years since to include domestic violence, just because one of the biggest reasons why women become homeless is domestic violence. And then very soon after we opened, we realized that if you help women, children often come with them. So we have family shelters and we have childcare, as well as free therapy for all survivors of domestic violence, including men, because it's healing the trauma that helps people go past what the trauma has brought them.
Oh, very good. And so tell me a little more about your role as the Director of Development at House of Ruth.
So I actually have been a donor at House of Ruth since 1999. It was one of my first organizations I donated to as a pretty young woman. And I have stayed with House of Ruth for years. I had a long career in bicycling and bicycle advocacy, and I still love it. But I told my husband, all I want to do is fundraise for House of Ruth. And luckily, just at that juncture, House of Ruth was hiring a development director. It's a huge privilege to be able to fundraise for to support all of the excellent work that gets done. So that's my role. I oversee all of the grants and foundations and individual donors that fund the good work at House of Ruth.
That's quite a big responsibility, and I know a lot of hard work in fundraising. So tell me a little bit about how in the past 7 years, Capital Harmonia has made a difference at the House of Ruth and the benefits of us coming there every year. I know we get a lot of benefits from it.
Yeah, I think it's such a mutually beneficial partnership. I just really cherish the nights that Capitol Harmonia comes to sing at Madison. I've been present for many of them, and the feeling in the room sometimes at the beginning is on the client side tentative and uncertain, and why are we being sort of made to come here, though there's always a lovely dinner provided by Capitol Harmonia the last few years, which is very wonderful and incentivizes women to come, but there's still just this feeling like, what are we doing? And what's most magical for me is hearing the beautiful singing. You're all so incredibly talented and the songs are so beautiful, but then watching and feeling the room change as the night progresses, and the clients, I think, feel the safety that you bring and the hope and the energy and the excitement around women's composers and women's music and what women can do. That's always such a big message. And we sing in that room, or you sing in that room with all those powerful messages of support. And so it's just I think a really healing night and a really inspirational night for the clients there, who always end up singing, as I recall, the last songs with y'all at your invitation. And it's beautiful. I always leave in tears. And then I think the partnership has deepened as we've grown to appreciate each other. This year leading up to, you even purchased Christmas dinner for the clients at Madison, which is our largest shelter. And that gift was enormous. They were able to enjoy a really special dinner at a time when loneliness is at a peak, not just because they're in a shelter and in a congregate shelter with a lot of people they don't know, but because of the year of pandemic. They've not been able to go out, they've not been able to explore. And I think that caring speaks to the relationship that we have with each other, where you're keeping our clients in mind and keeping what they need in mind, as we are grateful to you for the joy and the beauty that you bring to our space.
No, thank you. It's a very special time for us, as I mentioned, and every time we go there, as you said, you do feel the environment change as we progress through our performance. And the change happens not only with a group of women listening, but also within the singing group as well. And I feel the change there. And really, when we start engaging more and they start singing with us and clapping with us, and then at the end, as you said, we invite them to sing with us. And we actually had someone perform for us at one time, and it was amazing. And it was just such a special time, and for us to be there and to make a difference in someone's life for not only that time, but we think about House of Ruth always, and how we can help. And like you mentioned, during COVID time, it is very difficult to know what a chorus can do for our partners. And certainly House of Ruth was top of mind in the fall. And we really were happy to be able to help in some way. And so happy that all worked out, and they enjoyed a Christmas dinner and so forth. So. Well, wonderful. Yeah, that's very special. And we certainly look forward to this coming year, and in some way working again, performing and whatever that looks like for us. Of course, we all don't know, but we certainly continue to think of House of Ruth and how we can be involved. So, and then doing this interview and helping everyone know more about House of Ruth. So Elizabeth, tell us how one can help if they want to help the House of Ruth. How can they donate? How can they be more involved in the House of Ruth?
So thank you so much for that question. Keeping our clients in front of your mind, which is so appreciated. The best way to learn more about House of Ruth is our website at houseofruth.org. You can donate money there. We also have a wish list, so there's lots of ways you can donate. There's volunteering. You can come and bring a meal to Madison, just the way the choir provided a meal at Madison. You can donate in-kind donations, so people need sheets or things like that on our Amazon wish list. And then we also are always in need of diapers and laundry detergent. That is an ever-present need. There is never enough of either. So there's lots of ways to engage with House of Ruth. And you can also just reach out to me. My email is Kiker, EKIKER, at houseofruth.org. And thank you so much for the partnership. I can't wait to hear you sing in person. Hopefully
me too. We're very excited to do that again. And Elizabeth, I want to thank you for your time. It's great to see you again, at least in on Zoom, and look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully not long from now. And take care and appreciate your time with the interview. And we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you at the festival on March 8th.
Yes, of course. I wouldn't miss it.
Okay. All right. You take care. All right.
Thank you. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, I'm Janice Ware, and I am president of Capital Harmonia. We hope that you are enjoying our 6th annual Women's Festival that honors International Women's History Month. Celebrating women and supporting women's causes is Capital Harmonia's mission. Therefore, we are very committed to making the 2021 Women's Festival available to all of our partners, family, and friends. For the last 8 years, we have been very proud to support many organizations in song within the Maryland, DC, and Virginia area. And this year is no exception. In addition to producing this festival, we found many ways to continue our mission virtually and support our partners since we couldn't perform in person. For our House of Ruth partner, our course members donated $1,000 in order that the residents could enjoy a nice Christmas dinner together. We also sent holiday cards to the residents of the Potomac Falls Rehab Center. Today, we would like to honor all of our partners who make the difference in our communities every day. On the screen, you can see a list of our 29 partners. To our partners who might be watching, thank you for all that you do. We look forward to the day when we can sing for you in person. I would also like to recognize the hard work and dedication that made this festival possible, including the Capital Harmonia Chorus, who memorized and recorded 2 songs for this festival, Rachel Thompson, our accompanist, who helped record the guide tracks, the board members who helped plan this festival, and most importantly, Mary Ann East, our music director, who spent many hours creating, organizing, and working with Arts Laureate to produce our festival. Thank you all. Before I close, I have a request. Our chorus and mission would not be possible without the support of our partners, family, and friends. We would like to ask you to help us continue our mission by donating to Capital Harmonia. Our festival is our only fundraiser, and we rely on your donations to pay for our operating expenses, and because we don't charge for our performances. To donate, you can send a check to Mary Ann East at 15003 Olderick Drive, Centerville, Virginia 20120, or you can go to our Capital Harmonia website at www.capitalharmonia.org and select the contribution tab at the top of the homepage and select the donate button. We really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the performance.
We appreciate the opportunity to speak with Susan LaBarr, the composer of Where the Light Begins. Susan earned a BA in music and an MM in music theory from Missouri State University and completed further studies with Alice Parker. She sang professionally with the Tennessee Chamber Chorus and Coro vocal artists. Susan served as the Missouri Composer Laureate for 2012 and 2013. She has completed commissions for children's, high school, college, community, church, and professional choirs worldwide. In 2014, Susan was named as a National ACDA Women's Choir Consortium commissioned composer. Her arrangements have appeared on a Grammy Award-winning album and won a Choral Director Award. Susan is currently the choral editor for Walton Music. Welcome, Susan, to our annual choral festival.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
So how did you decide to focus your career on composing?
You know, it's kind of interesting because when I went to college, long ago now, I decided to study music, but I didn't have a real clear idea of what I wanted to do with music. I started as a piano performance major, and I was in that degree for a couple of years, and then kind of started realizing that I didn't want to accompany, and I didn't really want to perform, and I didn't want to teach piano. So I regrouped and switched my degree at that time. And I got a really general music degree, a Bachelor of Arts in Music, like you mentioned. And that degree really just allowed me to continue studying many different aspects of music. And when I graduated with that degree, I really didn't know still what I wanted to do with it. So I went straight on to my master's degree in music theory. And I always just really enjoyed music theory, and it came somewhat easily to me. And I thought, this is a good thing to continue studying, knowing that I didn't really want to teach it or be a teacher someday. So I continued to just work hard and learn as much as I could. And after my master's degree, my husband and I moved to Texas because he was starting his schooling there. And I worked in a doctor's office for a while to have an income coming in. But then an opportunity came open at a music publisher located in the Dallas area called Choristers Guild. And so I applied for that job and got that job. And once I was in that position, I started realizing all of these opportunities that are in publishing and composing. Mm-hmm. So I moved eventually into the choral editor position at Choristers Guild, and then eventually to my job now at Walton Music as a choral editor. And through all that time, I was composing really just on the side. It was projects that would come up here and there to begin with. And my first project was when I was in a choral arranging class in my master's degree. And a project I did there, the choir director at our university ended up performing. And so that combined with just being around choral music all the time in my editing job, it all just kind of snowballed into what I'm doing now, which is working as an editor and composing. So it wasn't something I planned in advance. It just was the perfect combination of kind of my talents and my skills and my experience all coming together.
To a wonderful end. So given the different types of choirs that you've completed commissions for, what can you share about how you approach a composition for a women's chorus or women's voices in particular?
One thing that I'm really concerned with is giving women really rich texts to sing, rich lyrics. I think that sometimes, especially in the past, and for me growing up being in a women's choir, a lot of times the songs we would sing would be about, like butterflies and flowers and rainbows and love and all those things. And so that's fine. And we want those things sometimes, but we obviously all know that women have so many different facets to them. So I want to always make sure to give women, and especially young singers too, really rich and meaningful texts that speak to the experience of being a woman or just being a human, and that maybe help us in difficult times, that maybe these texts and these melody lines will come back when we're feeling like we need some reassurance or some hope. So that's really important to me. Another thing that I'm very concerned with is just making sure that somehow I'm compensating for not having bass singers or a bass sound, because I think that sometimes if everything is too high and too bright, that it can lack some richness or lack some contrast. So I'm always trying to find a way to give the lower altos something that really is going to ground the piece. And if I am using piano, then I'm always making sure to fill in that kind of bass sound to just make it all have a weight to it in a way, and just, a richer sound.
What do you find most enjoyable about working on a composition for women's voices?
I really love this question because I haven't really thought about this too much, but obviously because I am a woman, I really understand the ranges of a soprano and an alto, and I am a singer as well. So I feel very comfortable writing for treble voices. And I just feel like I know where it feels good, where it sounds good, maybe where it's great to put the sopranos at the climactic moment, or what altos can really do down in the lower parts of their range. So I love that because it just feels comfortable and in a way easier because I don't have to second guess myself. I also just love the opportunity to empower women, kind of how I mentioned in the last answer about giving really interesting text. I love to give women the opportunity to say something really meaningful and to reflect on something meaningful. And I really love to give that opportunity to young women, especially. Just giving them something important to say is a tremendous gift for me. And to see that come to life and maybe these kids be inspired, that's really an amazing feeling.
Let's focus now on Where the Light Begins. So this is a fairly recent composition. How would you position it in your composition repertoire, in your composition history?
You know, I don't think I could ever really rank, my pieces from favorite to least favorite. Maybe a few of them would be easier than others to do that with. But something I've learned over the time that I've been composing, something I guess that I have taken to heart and really, really focused on, is that a piece of music doesn't have to be complicated to be very meaningful and to be very sophisticated. To me, I think that there is a lot of sophistication in simplicity. And it's kind of this idea of, if you're cooking and you're cooking something that has very few ingredients, you have to do them just right because there's nothing to hide behind. You're not adding a ton of spice and all the different things that will kind of cover up anything that's not quite right. So I think of that when I'm writing works for 2 parts or 3 parts or even just 4 parts, that every note that I put on the page has to be intentional and has to have a real purpose. I can't just put notes on there just for no reason or just because I like how they sound. It has to be with purpose. So that's what I like thinking about with this particular piece, writing just in 3 parts with a fairly minimal piano accompaniment, that it's simple, but it's still very sophisticated, in my opinion, and in many ways even more challenging because of the thought that has to go into keeping it simple, but also making it really interesting. So I'm very proud of this piece for those reasons. And just because it's 3 parts and something else I wrote is 8 parts, I still put those on an equal level, because I think there are different techniques you have to use and different things that come out in each of those occasions.
So this piece was commissioned as part of a concert theme of peace by a varsity treble choir. Did they ask you for anything in particular or give you any type of guidance on what they wanted?
Yeah, this was a choir in Texas, so it was a middle school age group, but very good. The top group at the school, and Texas choirs are always amazing anyway. So I knew that they had the ability to kind of do anything I could throw at them. I knew that the idea of peace was kind of an overall theme and kind of a loose theme, but at the time when I was commissioned to write this, that's kind of the direction it was heading. And I also knew which other pieces were already programmed for the concert, and that this was going to fall in a spot where the audience was almost going to need a breath, where the piece before it was a little more dramatic and complicated and maybe a little harder to listen to, or just more challenging to listen to. And so this was the chance to be a little bit of a breath for the singers and for the audience. And it was also a good spot for something very melodic, which is great because that's what I like to write. So I approached it from those guidelines, but then I wanted to find a text that was really kind of a more general idea of peace, not super literal, but something that these singers and the audience members could listen to and really find their own meaning in. And so that's kind of how this started to come about.
So that you mentioned the text, the poem the text is based on was originally written as a Christmas blessing What led you to select that particular text?
I love this poet, Jan Richardson. She is a pastor, and she writes this beautiful poetry, which she calls them blessings, actually. And then she also is a painter, visual artist, and she is just so incredibly spiritual. But the way that she writes and paints and gets her ideas across, it's very the word I like to say is like generically spiritual, where you can come at it from any lens, from any background, and find meaning in these texts for your own life. So she comes from a Christian background and Christian lens. And so if you read the poem from that lens, you can very much see that she's talking about the birth of Jesus at Christmas time. But she doesn't use super specific words. So someone else from some other background or some other walk of life can come at this from a totally different perspective and find great meaning. So this poem, even though she wrote it on Christmas Eve one year, and it's very much about the birth of Jesus, I think that you can also just read these words and see that it is about the idea of hope and the idea of peace, and that those things are in us and they're already in our world, and it's just up to us to reach for them and work toward them.
Great. So as our audience is about to listen to Where the Light Begins, how do you want the audience to experience this piece in light of everything that's occurred this past year? What should they take away from it?
There is a line that Jan Richardson, the poet for this piece, wrote on her blog that I really like, and I think is a great thing to keep in mind as they are listening to this piece. So the line says, "May we lean into the light that begins in the deepest dark, bearing itself into the world for us." So I think in this time when everything is really difficult and people are divided and the pandemic is really causing a lot of people to struggle, it's good for us to remember that in these hardest times, in these most difficult times, there is still light, there is still hope. And in fact, it might become brighter right now because we're so in need of it. So we're all searching for it. So I would love for people to remember that every single person has the opportunity to be that light to each other, to the world, to the people we work with, to our families, to our friends and our neighbors.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you for Where the Light Begins.
Thank you so much.
Where the light begins. Perhaps it does not begin. Perhaps it is always. Perhaps it takes a lifetime to open our eyes, to learn to see what has forever shimmered in front of us. The luminous line of the map in the dark. The vigil flame in the house of the heart. The love so searing we cannot keep from singing, from crying out in testimony and praise. Perhaps this day will be the mountain over which the dawn breaks. Perhaps we will turn our face toward it, toward what has been always. Perhaps our eyes will finally open in ancient recognition, willingly dazzled, illuminated at last. Perhaps this day the light begins in us.
Perhaps it takes
Our closing piece, How Can I Keep From Singing, was composed by Gwyneth Van Anden Walker. Born in New York City, Dr. Walker self-trained to compose at age 2, self-taught to play piano at age 4, and organized her first-grade friends into an orchestra. And the rest, as they say, is history. Dr. Walker has penned over 350 works for chorus, chamber ensemble, orchestra, solo voice, and solo instruments, and received numerous awards for her lifetime achievements. Currently, she splits her time between her dairy farm in Braintree, Vermont, and a home in New Canaan, Connecticut. How Can I Keep From Singing is an American folk song originally composed as a hymn by Baptist minister Robert Wadsworth Lowry. The song is frequently erroneously cited as a traditional Quaker or Shaker hymn. The text speaks to the triumph of faith and courage over oppression and imprisonment. Many versions have been penned across various denominations with changes to the lyrics, including one version by Pete Seeger referencing witch hunts of public agencies. Dr. Walker's original composition was commissioned by the Thetford Chamber Singers of Vermont. The version for women's voices was later written for the Children's Chorus of Washington, D.C. At this time of quarantine and isolation for many of our global family, we find this piece particularly touching. The choral community has not been able to rehearse and perform as we have for so many years. But in spite of all of this, how can we keep from singing?
Freedom, bringing, when first rejoice, both
I hope you have enjoyed our 6th annual Women's Chorus Festival. We would like to thank Elizabeth Kiker, Laura Farnell, and Susan LaBarr for their time and insight. We'd also like to thank again Arts Laureate for producing our concert today. If you would like to invite Capital Harmonia to perform for your organization, or you would like to sing with us, please contact us on our website listed on the screen. If you would like to make a contribution to Capital Harmonia, you may do so also by visiting our website and clicking on Contributions, or sending a check made to Capital Harmonia to the address listed on the screen. Thank you so much for spending a few moments with us today. We hope to see you in person very soon.